One more time. Good morning.
Good morning.
I tell you, I look over and I look at this crowd of people that have been part of my village, that have raised me since I was a boy here in this community. You know, back in the day, it didn't have to wait until you got home and mama would get you, because you already got by 5 or 6 people on the way home as you got there. And I tell you, that's what makes me so excited this morning about standing before you. But in regards to the Boys and Girls Club, my wife Jessica and I, who a lot of people know have been fighting in the trenches in this community for years, was on the founding board for the Boys and Girls Club. And I am so honored to see you guys here today. Thank you again for being here. Now what I tell you is this: before we get started with this, I just got to paint this picture for you. You know, sometimes in life we have situations and we have circumstances. And my grandmother used to make the best lemonade. And you know, we say make lemonade out of lemons. But let me paint this picture for you. My son is at a baseball camp and visiting Coastal Carolina College yesterday in North Carolina. We have an old camper that we drove up and spent the weekend there, watched him play yesterday. And on the way back, we got 10 miles away from the school, we have a flat tire. We sat in the Lowe's parking lot for 3 hours waiting for someone to come repair this tire. While I'm on the phone with roadside service, they said, you know, sir, I understand how important it is. No, I said, no, you don't. They said, yes, I understand. Everybody is important and every situation is important. After I went on to explain, the lady said, can you just cancel and have somebody do it for you?
Yeah.
But not God.
Yeah.
My son and my wife said, take the car off the trailer and we're gonna drive home. So we drove home last night, 6 hours for me to get here, to get a tire, put in my truck, drive 6 hours back after this, and then drive 6 hours back home. I say all this because while we were sitting in the car, I started to think about how I really wanted this to come together. And we started to turn on, my wife started bringing up old speeches of Martin Luther King, the other America, the dream. And we listened for over an hour of almost every speech that Dr. King gave. So I tell you all that to feel like, I don't feel honored. I feel honored. And I feel special. But I tell you this, is that I know that this is not me. This is truly God. Dear fellow citizens of Lamar County, on this day we honor the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a leader who fought tirelessly for justice, equality, and the betterment of our communities. As we reflect on his message, we must remember and consider, how can we continue to build a brighter future for us all? The theme of MLK Day event today is It Starts With Me. Each and every one of us has the power to make a positive impact in our community. And it's up to us to take action and be part of the solution. By cultivating a beloved community mindset, we can work together to transform those things that are around us. We can create a more equitable and just society for all of us. Dr. King had a dream, you see. Dr. King had a dream that this nation would rise up, not the battle cry of my beloved stepfather's Falcons. Y'all didn't hear me now. Rise up, but that we would live as sisters and brothers. I have a dream where little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls and walk together as sisters and brothers. Dr. Martin Luther King, August 28, 1963, at the Civil March in Washington, D.C. Now, when I call my friends, I ask, how are you doing? Some would reply, good, or I'm peachy. Now, Andy Bush would say, top of the world. But my favorite response is living the dream. Is it trendy or is it a fad? but it's still their dream. Well, I want to tell you that I have truly been living the dream. Not my dream, but the dream of Dr. King. I often think of all the places I have gone, all the people I have met, the stares, the mean comments, and even the racism. None of this can compare to my predecessors being spit on, sprayed with fire hoses, or beaten. At times, I might have been the only person in the room with brown skin, or the only brown member of the club, but I was there. For me, all of these were times and opportunities to break down barriers and build real relationships. Dr. King marched so that I could have the opportunity. God has covered me as I have navigated through some of the most terrifying situations, many times putting myself in places where my family thought I was crazy. But my goal was to encounter as many people that I could that didn't look like me, so I could show them love and friendship. Dr. King said, love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. In many cases, that friend was wearing a rebel flag t-shirt or covered in Aryan Nation swastika tattoos. But love turned them into a friend for life and created a foundation for how they will treat the next person that didn't look like them. Dr. King challenged the status quo. People often choose comfort and familiarity, but that's not where growth comes from. People often ask me my why. I tell them it's growing up in the small town of Barnesville, where like many southern towns, black people lived on one side and white people lived on the other side of the tracks. And one day I'll finish that book that I started, The Meeting at the Track, where I would have morning meetings with Dora Cox and Lee Woodall and Mayor Bell, and they would tell me the things that I would do that I never thought I would be able to do. Now, what was so unique about this was during those times in high school, I was able to travel across those tracks to parties on both sides of town. It was pretty cool. That was when CDs first came out. And my friend Jonathan Hamrick would sit in the front seat and hold my portable CD player. And on my CD case, one side I would have Metallica, and the other side I would have NWA. And we would go back and forth and go to parties that normally we couldn't go to. I would take white kids to parties on the black side of town, and I would take black kids to parties on the white side of town. But it was only because of Dr. Martin Luther King. I left here headed to college following the first MLK event that I participated in that Councilman Hightower put together. I was a senior in high school, and he said, hey, this would give you a great opportunity to practice speaking in public and to celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King. I was in charge of doing the occasion. I don't remember a whole lot of that speech, but I remember at the end, it was Youth Day, and I had everybody there chanting, I am Martin Luther King. I am Martin Luther King. I am Martin Luther King. I left there and headed off to college, and in my own way thought that I was Martin Luther King. I had friend groups of all sorts. I even thought that I could be student government president at a predominantly white institution. But I tell you what was so unique was I had one group that was diverse. It was as diverse as you could create it. There was Jewish guys in the group, there was white guys in the group, there was Chinese guys in the group, but it was so diverse. We learned so much from each other. Their parents would bring quiche and casseroles, and my mom brought her famous collard greens and candy yam potatoes.
All right.
We ate together. We broke bread together. We played sports together. We played basketball, baseball, football. I remember one day one guy said, why is it, guys, that we never played golf? And he looked directly at me. He said, do black people not play golf? Now, of course, this was before Tiger Woods. And I was fired up. I've always been competitive. Walter will tell you. I called my mom and I said, Mom, can you spare an extra $20 this week? And you know my mom.
Yeah.
She sent me 30.
All right.
Which probably meant she didn't have lunch for 2 or 3 days that week. I headed to Walmart and they had a bucket full of golf clubs. $5 per club. I bought 6. Some were even women's clubs. I told those guys, give me 3 months and I'll beat every one of you.
All right.
I practiced every day and yes, I eventually beat them. Now where this goes is that later in my career, a company I worked for called Health South became the corporate PGA sponsor. And my boss, who didn't play golf, said, hey, you can take this on. This is perfect for you. So I was in charge of finding medical staff and setting up all the medical trainers and all the things for every PGA and LPGA event in the state of Georgia. 1 year, it was pretty cool because I got tickets to these events as well. I took Mr. Wimley, Mr. Fletcher, and Mayor Bell to a PGA event at East Lake. Now let me paint this picture. Mr. Wimley said, son, we got to park over there at the old stadium. So I'm driving up. I had a parking pass, but I was listening to Coach Wimley. You know, I was trying to make this a special event for them. And we went over to the old Turner Stadium. And we got there and the guy said, no, this is not where you park. And Mr. Wimley said, okay. I said, all right. So we drove back over. He said, no, drive closer to East Lake. So as we drove closer, we started stopping at different places. They said, no, this is not where you park, further down. So finally, when we got down to our parking place, Mr. Fletcher looks over at out the window and he says, Will, that's Tiger Woods beside us. We were parked beside Tiger. We got out of the car and started having a conversation with him. As he did his practice rounds, he was hitting shots and looking over at Coach Wimley and smiling. They were in awe. It was truly the highlight of my life. I had just played in the Pro-Am there earlier that week. At the end of the event, Mr. Wimley said, boy, you have played on all the PGA courses in Georgia, but you still can't play golf on the course in your hometown.
Wow, wow.
And that is still true today.
Wow.
So I say to you, we still have work to do. And our work is bigger than who can play on a golf course. His dream was really a vision. Dr. King said, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Everybody can be great because everybody can serve. It is simple, but a large scope. He wanted black people to have the opportunities of white people. He wanted unity. He wanted equality. He wanted equity. He wanted us all to get along. His vision followed aspects of the Bible, how we would treat our neighbor, how we should run this race, how we should prepare ourselves, and how we should have faith, but ultimately how we should serve. Unity should not come only when our favorite football team is playing for the national championship. Who's that coming down the track? That mean machine in red and black. Last week I watched my niece Danae in the stands celebrating the Rose Bowl. UGA fans did not care about your economic status. Whether you arrived by car, by bus or train, or helicopter or plane. It didn't matter where you sat or who you sat beside. It didn't matter your political thoughts, whether you voted for Stacey or Brown. It didn't matter if you were black or white. All that mattered was how you were dressed. Now my mom used to tell me, dress for success. And on that day, for this season,
What?
that hour,
You had to be. Come on.
UGA Black and Red was success.
Yeah.
That in itself was Walt Disney's version of Dr. King's dream. Let us not wait for a game, a war, a virus, or even a tornado to unite us. When all of those are over, things are restored, we revert back to the separate silos that we're familiar and comfortable with. If Dr. King was alive today, I think his cry would be, that is not enough.
Not enough.
That is not enough. He said, be true to what you put on paper. There are more opportunities. We just have to be willing to be brave enough to walk into them. Because they will define and definitely be uncomfortable. Comfort keeps us still. The uncomfortable moves us forward through the forces that are pushing back. Now, how do we save our children? We share vividly with them what we have gone through, the potholes and the pain. We make them see the importance of education and opportunity. Yes, with my children, Hudson and Ryla, Jessica and I, we highlight education and opportunity. Two of my favorite analogies with this is this. Now, back before Kirby became Georgia, when he was under the great tutelage of Nick Saban, they once was at the Rose Bowl. And at the end of that game, they won. And they were celebrating. The players were out all night. The coaches were out. And then finally, one of the coaches looked over at Kirby and said, don't forget, you know Nick has a 7 o'clock meeting tomorrow, and you can't be late for Nick's meeting. So all the coaches rushed back to the room, went to sleep so they could be ready for the meeting. They get in the meeting, and everybody's sitting there. And it has to start on time. And Nick Saban walks in, Coach Saban says, guys, special teams could have done a better job. We could have made sure our coverage was a little bit better. Defense, we could have made sure that the line of scrimmage, that we were able to push and drive back. Offense, we could have done this, we could have done that, we could have changed the play calls, we could have done this. The offensive coordinator leaned over to Kirby and said, didn't we win the game? And Kirby replied to him and said, yes, but you don't have to be sick to get better. So community, we don't have to be sick to get better. There's still opportunity to get better. And there was one more that I heard that really touched this situation was there was these three guys. And for today's speech, I'll include Councilman Hightower, myself, and Scott Leverett standing over there. And we were walking through town. And we were always trying to get this guy. You know, he was smart. He knew a lot of things. And we felt like we could trick him. And we found this bird. And we held it in our hand. And we walked up to him and we said, oh man, can you tell us if this bird is dead or alive? Is it dead or is it alive? The old man sat back with knowledge and said, that bird you see, if I tell you that bird is dead, you're gonna open your hands and let it fly. But if I tell you that bird is alive, you're gonna pinch his neck and kill him. But what I'm telling you is this, is that you control your destiny. You control the life of that bird. We are fortunate to live in a community with rich history and a strong sense of community. However, we must also recognize that this world is constantly changing and we must adapt and evolve in order to thrive. One way we can do this is being good neighbors to one another. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a community to build a strong, thriving society. By working together and supporting one another, we can ensure that everyone has the opportunity to succeed. In conclusion, let us remember the words of Dr. King as we work together for a brighter Lamar County. The time is always right to do what is right. By cultivating a beloved community mindset and working together to transform, I can assure you that the road will not always be smooth, and the potholes will be present. But if we keep moving, those potholes won't turn into sinkholes.
Keep moving.
The one thing that I've learned about roads being a commissioner is regardless if it's a sandy base or rocky, Charles used to always say it had to have a solid foundation in order to create a permanently smooth surface. Build your solid foundation so you can follow your passion and purpose. So Lamar County, what are we doing? Are we gonna relive those old stories from our past? Or are we gonna have the courage to positively change the narrative of our future? Thank you so much.
Great job, Ryran.
Good morning. I am Elaine Pastor Butler, first vice of Brunsville Union.